How are you
Let's
doing?
have it. Let's have it. Really good, thank you. Busy day at work.
Um,
But really, yeah, really proud of the students. I'm been covering another class at the minute, so I've had a new class from the start of this term. So it's been massive challenges for me in terms of change this year. Um,
right,
and
yeah,
yeah, I've got loads of strategies that are going to hopefully help people to manage their mental health. Um,
amazing,
think the
amazing.
teaching, but also from from a neurodivergent perspective, from my ADHD background as well.
Yeah,
So yeah, looking forward to the comments, speaking to people. Haven't done a live in so long as well. I used to do them quite a bit on TikTok.
mm,
Like I'm a dad of two, assistant head teacher, really busy. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to like catching up with some of the followers, some of the guys who've been there, through this following this journey from right at the beginning as well. And it's been, I'm incredibly grateful for the amount of support and love that I receive from you guys. So
amazing.
yeah,
Well,
looking forward.
just a massive thanks for taking time out of your day, your busy day to be here. We really appreciate it. So, yeah, as you said, we just really want to have a chat with you about, your experience as a neurodivergent teacher,
Yeah.
be some tips for others that are in a similar position to you, but also, their kind of managers, school leaders, and their
Mhm.
colleagues, how can they be allies and really show up and be there for their neurodivergent colleagues. So hopefully there's a bit of something for everyone here
Yeah.
today.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I just wonder if maybe for those people that aren't so familiar with you, would it be all
Of
right,
course.
Jamie, if you just maybe gave a little bit
Yeah,
of an intro to who you are
absolutely.
and just kind of maybe a bit of about, it's a big question, but how does kind of your neurodivergency show up kind of in the classroom? And yeah, maybe just
Yeah,
giving a bit of an overview of that, if
yeah,
that's all right to start.
of course. So I'll just kind of start off from the beginning, basically from when my journey in education, where it all began. So I went into a school as a volunteer at 17. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my career. At that point, I was really wanted to go in the RAF. That was my hyper thought. I was like, I want to go in the RAF. Want to go in the RAF. That was all I ever kind of considered. And then when I applied for the role, I got really far in the interview process as well, like because there's certain elements to it. I thought I'm doing really, really well. I had to revise, like 150 different types of planes. My mom made little flashcards and she was testing me, and I was like smashing it. And I had a one-on-one interview, and one of the guys quite high up was like he had about nine or ten aircraft models like dotted around, and he was like, "What's that one? What's that one?" And I was like naming like all these models. I wouldn't have a clue now. And then I got a letter through just saying that, oh, I'm sorry, you're just too young for the role you're going to apply for. So my world got kind of, turned upside down because that was all I was kind of wanting to be, was being the RAF. And then my mum was a secondary school teacher in an SMH provision. It was actually called EBD back then. So that was for emotional behavioural difficulties. But now we know behaviour is obviously linked to mental health. So that's why it's social, emotional, mental health. So I went as a volunteer at 17. My mum said, "Come into my school, just come and help out and see what you think." So I went in, and immediately I was put in with like the year. Bear in mind, I'm 17 at this time. I was put in with the year 11s. So in
Wow.
terms of like stature size, and obviously EBD year 11 is quite thrown into the deep end. So I was getting mistaken for students some of the times because I was a really skinny
Yeah,
lad and
yeah,
really young faced. But then, even then, at 17, when these year 11s were getting frustrated, I had the confidence and skills to be able to relate to them and help them regulate at that age.
yeah,
And my head teacher at the time was like, "This is that's a bit unique." So actually given a teaching assistant contract 2 weeks later. So
amazing.
this was around about the March time. So I had a teach.
Mm,
I got a teaching assistant contract. Then they put me up to a HLTA quite quickly, and then at the end of the academic year, the head teacher at the time said, "Go away, get your degree, come back, and I'll give you a
yeah,
job as a teacher."
incredible.
And
Yeah, yeah.
that's exactly what happened. I wanted to study PE,
Mm,
so when it came to my teacher training, because I noticed like, especially the dance and stuff, a lot of I was fine with SMH provisions. They don't sometimes do the dance because of like the risk element and the way. So that was why I really wanted to do dance and like gymnastics and other sports because they were just kind of doing football.
yeah.
I wanted to offer
I've seen
more.
the dance videos as well, actually, which
Yeah,
are fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 they're
So
brilliant.
I just wanted to offer
Amazing.
football.
Yeah.
Then when I wanted to do school centre initial teacher training.
Mm.
So that's why you know 80% are at school and 20% at like college or university. So when I went for my skit, I went for PE and I went through obviously loads of interviews, loads of like training and stuff. And then when it came to us like, oh, we're not going to offer you a PE skit. I was like, oh no. I got and then it said, oh, we want to offer you primary. We think you could do everything. And I was just like, I don't know if I teach English and maths and science and history and geography. But they were like, I think you'll be really good at it. So I trained it's a primary SEMH and absolutely fantastic. Then I was given the opportunity to be primary leader during COVID. So I was head of primary during COVID. And
Lovely.
then a year and a year, March, I was promoted to acting assistant head teacher as well.
Incredible.
So
So, I mean, it's been there. It sounds like, it's been
yeah,
there with you teaching this
but
passion for years, which is,
yeah,
amazing, to hear about that.
but going back to
Yeah.
the volunteer and being able to relate from a young age, that was because, which I didn't know at the time, because I was diagnosed late as an adult. That was because I shared a similar brain type. These kids also had ADHD, and that's why I could see things that other practitioners, even experienced
Wow.
practitioners, might have missed because I actually had ADHD
I
myself. So I
I
was
think
kind
that's
of,
such a great point to make, isn't it? That actually a lot of times when people think about those of us that are neurodivergent, we can actually focus on kind of the areas that we struggle in. But there you go, as you're saying, this is giving you this ability to actually relate and to, see things that others can't see, which is really
yeah,
important actually in teaching when you're having to relate to so many different types of personalities in the classroom. So it's really great that you highlight that actually, Jamie. I guess I'm just interested to know, like, is there any other ways in particular that it's kind of shows up for you in the classroom, your ADHD, from a kind of
yeah,
challenge, but also maybe a struggle? Like, what
yeah.
does that look like for you?
I think if you're trying to create like a true inclusive classroom, the children have to understand your traits and your ADHD as well. So I'm combined, so I'm hyperactive and I'm also inattentive. Um, so little things like I'm I love routines, and
Mhm.
so do the children. So I'm heavily routine person. But little things like I'm terrible for misplacing objects to the point where if you're making it truly inclusive, you got to have a little bit of humor around it. So there'll be points where, you know, a child will say, Mr. G, yeah, you've took my pencil again. I'll be, oh, yeah, sorry, mate, like that type of thing. So for
Yeah,
like true inclusivity,
yeah,
the children have to be a part of that and understand, oh, no, that's just
yeah,
Mr. G. Like I'm not one of those teachers who, like now I'm on a spinny chair, which isn't great for me. I won't have one of these at school because I'll be like spinning around. But I'm never at my desk. I'm
mm,
constantly patrolling, constantly moving around,
mm,
and which can sometimes be a bit distracting,
mm.
especially like when I'm doing whole class teaching and I'm not in the same place all the time.
Right.
But the children kind of grow to learn with that
Yes.
that style as well. Like it can be very
Mm,
hands-on, very kinesthetic. Um,
mm.
so I think it's having the understanding from the children as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things we teach is obviously for our children to use their words from the get-go so we can understand their mental health. But also we'll teach about specific neurodivergent conditions as
Brilliant.
well. So we'll do a lesson on ADHD, we'll do a lesson on focus, we'll do more than one lesson, sorry. We'll do a
Yeah,
lesson on hyperfocus.
yeah,
We'll look at all these positive traits and we'll look at some of the harder stuff, the
yeah,
impulsivity and ways to manage that as well. But I
yeah,
think like just doing that together, especially in like humor can be so powerful. Just got to make sure, especially with
absolutely.
ADHD, it's not you don't go cross the line and be sarcastic
Sure.
because
It's
that can
the
lead to
fine line,
negative.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
can lead
yeah,
to
yeah.
negative behavior
Because
change. But
everyone's so unique, I guess. That people take things in different
yeah,
ways, don't they? So yeah. But it sounds, Jamie, like you've got a really great relationship with the kids, and it's brilliant you're opening up these kind of conversations with them. But I guess I'm wondering, like, in terms of your working relationships with your colleagues, like, how has that been for you? How has that been? Has that
so
been
it was a big it
anything
was
there?
it was a big eye opener when I actually got the how the ADHD diagnosis came about. I've helped to diagnose hundreds of children throughout my academic career by filling out like teacher perspective feedback to a service called CAMS. So and when we're looking through like all the different points, it was just one day I just related it to myself. I've never done it because I was always from the perspective of the child, and I was like linking it to them. And I was just reflecting through it was just one feedback form once. I was like, hang on a minute, I'm hitting, 95% of these traits.
Yeah.
And like as an adult, I'm like,
Mm.
I wonder if this is like a big part of it. And then when I was introducing the movement breaks into class for regulation, I was noticing it's helping me massively.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, right, yeah, we need to get this, like looked at. Um, so I was originally on the NHS waiting list, but as an adult, it was 8 years. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was on it for three to
Yeah.
four
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. It's
And then it
tough.
wasn't
Tough.
actually until somebody from Instagram put on like a
Mm.
comment on one of my posts when I was talking about I was doing a series about like leading up um to this, and they said, have you tried the NHS right to choose
Yeah.
route for ADHD? And
Yeah.
I was like, oh
Yeah.
no, I've never heard of that.
Mm.
So I don't know why that isn't common knowledge from the start, because I wasted 3 years, in the actual
Yeah.
NHS one. So
Mm.
I went through a company through ADHD 360, and I got diagnosed within 8 months. And it was honestly the process from start to finish was brilliant.
Yeah.
I would really recommend that. So it took eight months in a pause to 8 years. But when I
Yeah.
got that diagnosis, and I spoke to the head, it was just
Mm.
I spoke to the head and one of the senior members of staff who does the timetable. So it was little things like, for my duty points in the morning, I wanted to be on the football pitch for movement.
Mm.
So
Right.
I wanted to do move. So instead of being one of the member of staff, sit there with a coffee flask, just
Yeah.
chatting. No, I'm going to be out here with the kids, actually moving myself. So I'm
Mhm.
supervising, but I'm moving as well because that movement's going to actually help my brain.
Yeah.
So that was put into place for me. So I'm always on a morning break. So
Yeah.
I've got 20 minutes when I'm actually physically doing football with the kids. Um,
Brilliant.
and
And was
then
there anything helped that kind of when you kind of you've spoken to maybe senior leaders in your when you're setting, is there anything particularly if maybe if there's someone watching now
Mm.
that has a colleague that, for example, might have recently, disclosed to them a diagnosis, is there anything that you would any advice you'd say? Is there anything particularly that you kind of want them to know from your perspective?
I think it's obviously understanding, what works for you as well as your strategies, your self-regulation strategies. So for me,
Mm.
movement is a massive part of it, but there's other things, like music, walking. There's so many
Yeah,
exercise. There's so
yeah,
many. Talking to somebody, um, drawing, mindfulness, painting.
yeah,
It can be whatever your strategy is, but also understanding, your triggers as well. So if you're getting really like overwhelmed with work and stuff, there should be someone at school that you can talk to about that.
yeah,
And from a like, neurodivergent side, what's really important is that you don't burn out and get to the point of overwhelm. So I particularly struggle with the organisation side. So
yeah.
I use my diary and use little check boxes, and then just put it in my routine. Right, open my diary and
Color coded.
yeah, little
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of learning about your personal, what works for you in terms of your self-regulation tools. What's in your toolkit? What can you go to? Is there anything that your school can do to help with that toolkit?
Yeah,
So for me, obviously, movement was a massive part of it. So I'm still kind of supervising the children, but I'm getting something out of it in terms of
yeah.
regulation as well. So is that
Mm.
something that can benefit the children and you at the same time? That would be the ultimate goal. But if not, that we have things like we have Cuddle Club on a Wednesday afternoon where there's no briefing, and the staff will just meet, have a coffee and a chat,
Yeah,
and we'll
yeah,
just decompress.
yeah.
Sometimes, I got given some great advice when
Mm.
kind of overwhelmed as like someone who's neurodivergent is
Mm.
just to slow down,
Oh, yeah,
and it's
yeah.
great advice because
Easily said, but hard to do,
yeah,
huh? Especially in your sort
it's
of role. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. When
um,
I stepped up to senior leadership, I could be hitting with six tasks at once by the head.
yeah,
So it's just a point of right process, slow down, and
yeah,
then prioritize.
yeah,
Like what's a key priority, right? That's an urgent one, so let's deal with that.
yeah,
This one could be dealt with in a couple of days, or even might be next week.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to get to the point where you're trying to do 12 things at once.
This is it. And I know us ADHDers, we're very good at doing 12 things at
Yeah,
once, aren't we?
yeah,
Yeah, it's totally relatable what you're saying. You know, it's trying to find ways to stop and slow down.
yeah,
Easily said, but hard to do. And it looks different for everyone, doesn't it? Like for you, I'm hearing this movement is massive for
yeah,
you
it
to
is.
have those movements times in the day. But for other people, I guess it might be something else. But the main point is that I guess what you're saying is just finding something that helps you
Just the
take
thing
a
up
step
to, yeah.
back.
So
Yeah,
try and think of your self-regulation toolkit. What
yes,
what what works for you, and
I
how
love
can
that.
you
That's
how can you
good.
how can you implement that throughout your day?
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
could be like it could be before you do. So sometimes I'll quit. I think I put it on one of my channels once. I was really low in mood. No, nothing like happened in the morning. I was just groggy. Might have been sleep related or whatever.
Mm,
And I just filmed like the before and then the during and the after of a movement break. So I
yeah,
done about 30 seconds of quite high intensity dance. And
yeah,
then after it, I was like, honestly, completely regulated.
yeah,
Breathing's a massive one. You know,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
use breathing quite a lot.
Yes,
Um,
yeah. Oh, big fan of breathing. And that sounds funny, doesn't it, when you say
yeah,
that? But the 3 minute breathing space, I don't know if you've tried that one, Jamie. That's one of
haven't
my
tried that
favourites.
one. Haven't tried
Yeah,
that one.
not tried that one. It's a good one just to get you to sort of ground yourself and just take a minute to say, how am I actually feeling right now? Because I think it's I don't know if you have this, but as someone that has ADHD, I definitely lose touch sometimes with my body and kind of the cues it's giving me, the signals to tell me, Emily, you're tired, you've
Yeah,
been working, you need to take a break now, you need the
yeah,
loo, time to go to the loo. I know not as
yeah,
always as easy as a teacher because you can't always go to the loo whenever you want,
yeah,
it's time to have a glass of water. I think it's easy, isn't it, for us neurodivergent people to kind of miss those
yeah.
cues. So finding
That's
a way to
yeah,
stop and listen to your body is, however that you do that, that's so important to just give you that little kind of check in with yourself
yeah.
is important, isn't it? I just wanted to go kind of circle back as well, but you were talking about stress earlier.
Mm,
And I don't know if you're aware of our teacher wellbeing index, but you won't be surprised that yearly we find chronically high levels of
mm,
stress among teaching staff. And there's a lot of research as well around neurodivergent people experiencing higher levels of stress. So
yeah.
obviously this is a big risk factor for neurodivergent colleagues, stress. And I was just wondering specifically around stress, is there anything that you found particularly helpful, or is there a message that you would say to anyone out there watching right now that's particularly dealing with stress of the role, neurodivergent or not actually? Is there any pearl of wisdom that you
Yeah.
would give them?
The main thing in terms of a lot of my stress comes from I'm brilliant at adapting on the spot. Um, but if I had to cover a lesson from, just out of the blue, it'd be like, things like that. I think for me, in terms of my actual teaching, to help reduce stress is just being super organized. So I'll plan, have a long-term plan for the year before,
Mhm.
I'll sacrifice, a few days of my summer holiday, but then that plans out the full year.
Yeah.
So from that, you just got to, you got to do like your medium stuff, and
Mhm.
then start gathering your resources.
Mhm.
Um, so I think if you well, my graphic had a good one. So what if you're really stressed and you're anxious?
Yeah.
Like the cure to that is know your subject.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's quite a good one. That's always kind of resonated with me.
Mhm.
So if you know your subject and you're super organized, you can deal with the challenges
Yeah.
because you've got the base there. When you're running around last minute trying to print off resources, it's just going to bring your levels straight up. But if you've got the time and you're getting your PBA like you should, just
Mm.
trying to utilize that. What sometimes happens is we can get PBAs taken away to do cover.
Mm.
That's that's when it affects well-being and stress, or
Mm.
when staff are absent and you're having to do, cover and do more than one roles as well.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but yeah, I try. I deal quite well with stress,
Mm.
especially from as like a senior leadership when it can come all at once.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think just going going back to my toolkit as well.
Yeah.
So and try and prioritize
Mm.
like what's I use with the kids like the problem scale quite a bit. Like in terms of is it like an emergency problem, or is it if I actually break it down,
Mm.
is there something I can deal with a little bit of like mental
Yeah.
resilience.
Yeah. And that's, that's it, isn't it? We've all got different things in our toolbox and different things that help us. And it's kind of, you know, talking to our family, talking to our colleagues, taking time for ourselves outside of work. It's all going to look different from everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we're kind of going to that back to help replenish yourself and build your resilience back up. That's so important.
And with
Um,
new
I mean,
teachers starting the provision, obviously starting the profession as well. There's loads of AI coming out now that can support with planning. There's loads of free tools out there, and
yeah.
there's loads of teachers who are wanting to support and help.
Mm,
And especially from the AI side of things.
yeah. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Work smarter, not harder. That's what they say. Yeah. Oh, brilliant, Jamie. Well, so many good tips there. I guess one of my kind of final questions, really, well, maybe two final questions, is we've spoken kind of like about emotional support, like supporting yourself. We touched a bit on how maybe leaders and managers might support you. Is there anything you would say to other colleagues in the school? Like, how can they show up for their neurodivergent colleagues? Is there anything particularly that you'd want to say to them?
Yeah, I think it's just a bit to do with awareness and understanding of the conditions and learning together. So yeah, it's not really common knowledge. A lot of, I think I'm the only member of staff who is actually diagnosed
Mm,
with a
mhm,
neurodivergent condition
mhm.
currently on our roll.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of staff. I don't want to make it like a sweeping generalization here, but there's a lot of staff in an SMH provision that could be neurodivergent as well.
I mean, it's a really
Um,
good point to make, though, isn't it? Because actually, we don't want to make assumptions about people, but equally, it might be that you're working with colleagues that are neurodivergent. Perhaps
yeah,
they might chosen not to be diagnosed. They
yeah,
might not
yeah,
be
yeah.
aware, maybe. They might be on a wait list and you're not aware of that. There's all different situations. So actually, it's good to just consider that, isn't it? That
I think
actually people are comfortable with discussing different
yeah.
things.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, one of the first things we try and teach our children is to use their words as well.
Yeah.
Trying to communicate their feelings when they're completely non-verbal. So if they can get to the point where they can communicate their needs with us, we can start to adapt and tailor our practice around them to
Hmm.
support them.
Hmm.
We do that with
Hmm.
adults as well. So if I've got a member of staff who's dyslexic, and
Mm.
they let me obviously if I haven't had a look at that, that staff profiles and had a look through things, I might not know that. It might not be
Mm.
obviously common knowledge. But if they've actually verbally told me, oh, you know what, I'm struggling with this part of my report because of my dyslexia, I'm 100% I'm going to help. I'm going to support as a senior leader. So
Mhm.
that is my role.
Yeah,
I'm there as a pillar of support.
yeah.
I'm not one of those who just one of those managers who'll just be like, you do this. I will lead and from the front and
Mhm.
and help where I
Yeah.
can. So I think using your words is massively important for anything. I know sometimes that you can't always do that.
Mm.
Um, but if you can get to that point where, you're that emotionally aware of,
Yeah, and being brave enough, I guess,
massive.
to have those conversations. It sounds like that's
Absolutely.
kind of what you're saying as well, that it's all right to have those conversations within reason about what your neurodivergent
It
colleague
comes
wants
to,
to divulge
yeah.
to you. Yeah.
It comes back to your culture. If you're creating an inclusive culture that's accepting the children,
Mm.
the staff are also going to feel that as well. So
Yeah.
they're more likely to open up about their own personal experiences,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
when they do that as well, the children relate more to that. So
Mm.
when I'm doing a lesson on ADHD, I'll refer to my experiences, and there's if I'm doing it on another saying like dyslexia, and I've got a dyslexic member, I've actually had a dyslexic member of staff in when I've been doing a lesson on dyslexia, and they spoke about some of the challenges and some of the
Mm.
things that helped them like
Mm.
directly. That's powerful for the children to see that
It
because
is.
it's not like just a video or a picture of somebody. It's someone there present, and
Mm.
and it's someone who's around their daily lives.
Mm.
So when I had my ADHD diagnosis, I try and use that and say, well, you know, Mr. G's got to a point. He's got to a point in his career that he's well respected. He's obviously got a good goal, got a good role, good job. He's doing well. Got
Yeah,
a good family. You guys can do that as well.
so
You
important.
know,
You
it's
can't
if
be
you've
what you
got
can't see. They say that, don't they? And it's true. It's really, really
you've got
important to be.
the right support and guidance, and you believe in yourself, and you go back to your self-regulation toolkit, and you're smashing all these strategies, and you're understanding, oh, I'm being a bit snappy with my with my partner there, and we're right, okay, I need to pull something out of the toolkit
Yeah,
here just to regulate.
yeah,
Um,
that's it,
like
isn't it? Yeah.
one of my mundane tasks is doing the dishes.
Oh,
So
okay.
I get around that by it might take us a little bit longer, but I'll plug in my music and I'll do probably a little bit of dancing.
Yeah,
It'll take a little bit longer, but it gets us through that task.
that's
It's,
it, isn't
it's,
it? It's finding a
yeah,
way to get through those tasks that maybe aren't giving us the dopamine
yeah,
that we'd like. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
when our ADHD minds are bored, we're looking for that dopamine. You know, we're
yeah,
actively seeking for it. So
yeah,
let's try and make it a positive dopamine hit and not, a negative one as well.
yeah. You just made me think, actually. I don't know if you've seen this video, but I feel like you might have, Jamie. There's a video by a content creator called Purple Ella, and she talks wonderfully, particularly about the autistic spectrum. And she talks about how the spectrum isn't just a line with one person on one
Yeah,
end and one person on another end.
yeah,
It's
100%.
actually, it doesn't actually work like that. And she gave a really lovely example that it's almost like if you imagine the dials on a stove. So everyone will have certain aspects of
Yeah,
the autism is the one she gives the
yeah,
example of. So you might have really turned up, really high sensory
yeah,
kind of overload. Perhaps, for example, when you go into the classroom or the office, bright lights
yeah,
affect you particularly.
yeah,
You might have maybe turned up a pinch for social and communication, you know, differences, and then maybe a pinch for another aspect, of autism. And that's, she kind of describes that as your autistic profile, or
yeah, yeah,
basically how autism shows up for you. And then I love the point that she makes. She says that for another person's stove, they might be turned up really high for kind of communication
yeah.
differences. And they might
It's a
be turned
great
up really high
analogy.
for routine,
Yeah,
but actually quite sensory needs are quite low. Maybe they struggle a bit with
yeah,
noise, for example. And I thought that was so great because it really highlights, doesn't it, that if you've met one autistic person or you've met one person with dyslexia, that only means that you've met one person with autism or one person with
yes,
dyslexia or one person with ADHD. That's all that
yeah,
means. And I think that's quite helpful in terms of, remembering to
yeah,
listen to your colleagues, which is what you were talking about
yeah,
earlier, kind of
yeah,
having those
absolutely.
open conversations and actually finding out, let them tell you what they need rather than making assumptions, I guess,
Well,
which was
I
beautifully illustrated.
I had a
Yeah.
really powerful moment with a student when we're talking about ADHD in terms of misophonia. So I was talking about like sounds that irritate me and like the repetitive tapping, and the student was doing like repetitive tap, and the looked up at me, and they could see like I was ready like to like challenge it on a low level, just be like, and then they looked up and was like, that's the thing, isn't it? And I was like, and they're like, no, and then they completely stopped doing it. So
Mm.
that was like, that's so much respect for that, where that students actually thought, oh, this is actually really irritating Mr. G, yeah, and this is this misophonia that he spoke about previously,
I
um,
see. Yeah.
and then this student has been like,
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to stop
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but because of that student's kind of just fidgety, and then I gave that student like some sensory empathy instead, and that
Mm.
stopped that. But it was interesting because I could have went another way.
Mm.
So I knew I had the kind of respect of that class to talk about misophonia and how
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
things irritate me, and they could have all
Great example.
they could all
Yeah, it's a
start
great example of,
banging and stuff, and I would have been like, ugh. So I've kind of taught them one of my kind of triggers,
yeah.
um, but it will
Which I guess could
actually
relate to
does
your
work.
colleagues as well, the colleagues that you're working with. There might be certain
Oh
triggers that
yeah,
you communicate with them, and hopefully they would also take that on board as
yeah,
well, which
yeah.
is yeah, the way it should be. That's really great. Well, I think we're kind of nearly coming to the half an hour. It's been so lovely to chat to you. I could chat to you all day, Jamie. So
Well, we'll
thank
do it
you so
again. We
much.
have to do it again.
It's been really, really great. Is there one last thing that you'd like to say before we kind of finish up to anyone else watching? Any like little bit of advice or anything you'd like to end on?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of things in the press lately, with people with neurodivergent, basically saying, like if you're neurodivergent, it's going to affect your life chances. Your life's not going to be as great. You're not going to achieve anything. Whereas I completely disagree with that. A lot of, yes, I'm not naive. There are going to be challenges for sure. And like you're saying, there's so many different aspects of neurodivergence where some people may need that support for their lives. But to not make a difference, these children are making a difference. There's these you've got autistic children who, if you're autistic on a spectrum, these autistic people are finding love. And they were told they would never find love.
Mm,
They're told they've never been a job. I've seen, you know, stories from autism where he's only employing he's neurodivergent staff. Times are changing. We are evolving. We just got to spread the message out there. We need to get awareness out there. So I am now obviously assistant head teacher. I'm neurodivergent as well. So we are getting there. The
mm,
reason more adults are getting diagnosed with like neurodivergence is because we know more about it now. It's not that it wasn't a thing back then. The NHS didn't recognize ADHD till the year 2000. That was why we just know more about the science now. So
mm,
things well, there's going to be a massive increase in the on diagnoses of neurodivergence. So this is just going to rise, and society is going to have to evolve.
mm,
Back in obviously prehistoric times, we were the best hunters, but now we're kind of being trapped to fit into a society. It's okay to come out of that and be yourself. And
great bit
I,
of
I,
advice.
I did it for a while. Didn't realize when I was a child. I masked my ADHD massively because I was scared of what the lads would think,
Mm,
and just to trying to fit in.
yeah,
But they all know that now and don't treat me any differently. So don't worry. Don't worry too much about what other people think.
think
That
that
like
sounds amazing.
I put myself out there when I'm dancing on TikTok. People say, "Oh, that's
Mm,
so cringy."
love
Who is that?
the
Doesn't matter.
dream.
Honestly,
Yeah,
one opinion. So yeah, just I'm try not to let the little things get you, and really start building up your toolkit, because it sounds daft, but that toolkit will be with you for life. So if you can start getting it right as a child, and the time you progress through adolescence, you're going to have so many strategies you can refer to help manage your mental health.
yeah.
So that would be my
Great,
advice.
great advice for students and staff alike, I think,
Yeah,
to embrace who you are as much as you can. And that compassion for yourself is so
yeah,
important, especially for staff who are supporting students every day and showing up every day. It's really important to take care of yourself and look at what's in your toolbox to support yourself. I really, really agree with you. Couldn't
yeah.
agree with you more, Jamie. Thank you so much. It's been so good to
Thank
chat to
you.
you.
Thank you.
And rest of
We'll have to
your
definitely do this another
evening.
time.
Amazing. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the
Thank you.
day. Enjoy the rest of the
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care. Bye,
Bye.
guys.